Can't we get on with the show? I can't bear all this hanging around.
You have sat there too long for all the good you have done. In the name of God, go.
That's a bit rude. I've only just got here. It's said that we get the leaders we deserve, in which case we must have been very, very naughty. We have a Prime Minister who can't even command the support of a majority of his own backbenchers, and a Leader of the Opposition who, many think, when faced with an open goal, can't even kick the ball, never mind put it in the back of the net. Boris Johnson has lived to fight another day, but only with his authority gravely undermined. From Northern Ireland to housing to tax and spend, he's incapable of commanding unity even within his own team. His party's default now seems to be plot, squabble, division. There's not much of that, of course, in Keir Starmer's Labour Party. But that's because even some of his own MPs don't know what the party stands for. So there's nothing much to argue about. Mr Johnson addresses us as if he's still on the after-dinner circuit for clowns, rather than with the sobriety required of a leader of a great country in great trouble. Mr Starmer has the gravitas, so much so that he even bores some of his own side to death. Spontaneous, he is not. An Observer poll today says folks still prefer Mr Johnson to the Labour leader as Prime Minister. I mean, really? Kind of says it all for Mr Starmer. But hold on. The hour is nigh for interesting Ed Davey. His Lib Dems are hoping for a good night at the Tiverton by-election. Though if any of you think he's the answer to our leadership deficit, I have a bridge to sell you. In times of gathering crisis or national transformation, great leaders have emerged. Churchill, Attlee, Thatcher, Blair. Oh, is that where it ends? I fear many long, dark nights before that kind of leadership emerges again. Good evening, welcome to the Andrew Neil Show. Madeline and Stephen are back. Actually, we couldn't get rid of them. They've been sitting there since this time last week. We'll pick up with both of them later. But first, with Boris Johnson far from out of the woods and Brexit back out as a matter of public debate, who better to talk to than former Tory Brexit Minister, serial rebel, and not the Prime Minister's best friend, David Davis. Welcome to the programme.
Good evening.
Now, your party, the Tories, they won a landslide in 2019. Only 2.5 years later, your leader is hauled below the waterline. The parliamentary party is a cesspit of cabals. Labour's consistently ahead in the polls. Many of your own MPs don't think you can win another election. Is the Tory party fit for purpose?
Well, it's staggered, to put it mildly, through the last 2 years. But then, I didn't forecast the COVID crisis when, I voted for Boris Johnson 2 or 3 years ago. And that COVID crisis has caused problems for lots of countries, not just ours. I mean, Germany's in some difficulty in the same sort of way. France, well, you can make your own judgments and so on. But clearly, we've got a lot of things that we've got to get right. We've got to start to remember what it is that makes a successful Tory government. Low taxes, deregulation, international trade, strong defence. Things that we have to rediscover, I fear.
Well, maybe it isn't COVID. Maybe it's none of the above. Maybe the party's fundamental problem is it's got too many plotters and malcontents like you.
No, I don't think so. I think it took me quite a long time to get to my view as you broadcast at the beginning of the programme on what would happen with Boris or what should happen with Boris. But the simple truth of the matter is, at the moment, we've got the highest tax levels in modern history. I mean, certainly the highest tax level any Tory government's ever had. We have a confusion over inflation too. I mean, arguably, we've actually worsened the inflation numbers. These are big things for a Tory party, and we've got to get it right. And, you don't just sit there as a backbencher and do nothing when that happens. You have to say something.
But they're big problems that all Western governments are grappling with.
That's right.
And isn't it time to cut the Prime Minister some slack? I mean, he won.
Yeah.
Not convincingly.
Yeah.
But he won. Isn't it time to rally round and show some loyalty?
Well, I don't know if you saw it, but I wrote in this week that we shouldn't be shortening the time between confidence motions, or some people wanting to say, it should be less than a year. The rules are it should be a year. I said, no, give him the year. let's actually do something about it. Say, let's see if we can deliver a low tax policy. Let's see if we can deliver a housing policy. Let's see if we can deliver a better education policy, because we need to on all those things.
So you want to give him a year? You told me recently that you thought he'd be gone by the autumn.
Well, there are two things going on. One's the confidence motion that's in the Tory party's remit, as it were. The other thing that is a risk to him is the Privileges Committee. And they are going to make a judgment in the course of the
This is a Commons Committee.
It's a Commons Committee, yes. And the argument was made to the Privileges Committee that the Prime Minister had effectively, well, the judgment is knowingly misled the House. That's the question. Did he knowingly mislead the House? And they'll take evidence from him, from Carrie, from the people who work in Number 10, people who attended these parties and so on. They'll look at photographs and so on. And then they'll come to the conclusion, did he knowingly mislead the House? If they come to the conclusion he did, and who knows? I mean, I don't know what they're going to judge. If they come to the conclusion he did, then that's a resigning offence.
When does it become too late to remove him?
Well, I mean, I suppose if you're coming back to the Tory party, if you think you've got an election absolutely on the imminent horizon, then it may not be the wisest thing to do. I mean, funnily enough, I was actually...
Well, that's his call, though.
Well, up to a point. I mean, once the decision's been made, if a decision's been made to remove him, it's not his call anymore. I mean, whatever the...
No, but it would be his call to call an election. I mean, if you work on the schedule that, look, there doesn't have to be an election until late winter 2024, the five-year parliament. But I would suggest that most sensible Tory strategists will think we shouldn't go beyond the spring or early summer.
That's right. I think summer 24 is right. the intelligent backstop.
So if you're going to remove him, how soon do you remove him, or how much before that backstop?
Well, I think probably about a year. I mean, if we give him 12 months, and in that 12 months he hasn't won back the 148, whatever it was, or held it off, then people will come again. I mean,
but he has a year in
the 50.
He has a year.
On that basis, in terms of what the
putting aside the parliamentary
putting aside the parliamentary privilege, exactly, and and he should have a year. Look, I mean, you can't. I've lived through lots of prime ministers having had confidence votes against them, and once a year is quite enough, frankly, because if you're trying to run, you yourself said this is a difficult time for every country in the world, let alone in Britain. And the Prime Minister's got to be able to run the show from that point of view. So if he's always looking over his shoulder thinking the first unpopular thing he does will throw him out, then that's a disaster. Okay. Because a lot of what he's going to have to do is going to be unpopular. I suspect we're going to have to put interest rates up, for example. That's not going to be popular.
No, again, that's not his call. That's the Bank of England's call. But if he has to do these unpopular things, if he is going to change his ways, if his reset includes a far-reaching reshuffle, with the intent of creating a big tent cabinet, would you be prepared to join it?
It's not a matter I've thought about. Look, when he started this after the election, he said to me, "What do you want?" And I'm afraid what I said to him was, "Nothing you can give me, Boris." I mean, I had other things to deal with at the time.
But that was then. What about
that was
now?
Then. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not hunting a job. I really am not.
But wouldn't... I'm not sure if that's a no or that you're open to offers if it was the right offer.
Look, the country's in trouble, right? If there was a job that I thought I could usefully do, then I think it's all of our duty to do it. But I don't think that's going to be coming. I'm not wasting time thinking about it because I don't think it's probable. Put it that way. If
Mr. Johnson doesn't cut the mustard in the way you've been talking in the months ahead, up to a year, you say. Is there still a flicker of hope in your heart for your own leadership ambitions?
No.
Categorically.
Yeah. I mean, I know what I like doing. I mean, I like trying to make a difference, and there are many ways to make a difference, and I could do it both on front bench and back bench.
So if he has to go and his successor is not you, who should it be?
Well, we'll see when the time comes. Look,
you don't have a favourite at the moment?
No, I don't. I certainly don't have a favourite at the moment. I mean, again, to go back through elections, you'll remember. I mean, John Major emerged probably within 3 months of Margaret Thatcher going. David Cameron, much the same. So, you know, and
John
for it-
Major emerged immediately after Mrs. Thatcher going.
he emerged, he became a candidate in people's minds only in the last few months before Margaret
before
Thatcher.
she won.
Right? Same with Cameron, same with May.
But you've
actually, same with Boris.
But you did run for the leadership against David Cameron. Have others been asking you to consider running?
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
the Tory gene pool is not exactly chock-a-block at the moment. Have they been asking you?
The answer is yes, and I've been unenthusiastic
Unenthusiastic?
to them. Yeah.
Right, that's not a complete... If asked, I will not run. If run, I will not accept. You know the American phrase. It's not a...
Yeah, unfortunately, you know, I get into trouble when I make quotations, as you see.
Are you not encouraged by Mr. Johnson's efforts to reset policy on matters like tax, on net zero, on housing, on cost of living with that enormous package?
Yes, I am up to a point. I mean, Boris likes to say, with some claim to accuracy, that he makes the big calls right. One of the problems, however, in a modern society is that you've got to make more than just the big calls right. You know, if I can't get a passport, or I can't get a driving license, or I can't get my pension, you know, all these things are not big calls, but they're important. Similarly, on something like net zero, if we haven't actually thought through how we're going to deliver a nuclear power station every year, or what we're going to do about North Sea oil, North Sea gas. You know, we've been importing gas like Billio. There's no great saving if we get it from abroad and still burn it as we get it from our own North Sea. So there are a whole series of items of detail, which frankly, I've been, you know, I suspect others have been moderately forgiving of the government because of the COVID disruptions, but we haven't got that excuse anymore. We've got to get that right. So, you know, yes, I am pleased he's beginning to look at some of these issues again, but we've got to get it right. We've got to actually work on it properly.
Well, we've got Northern Ireland coming back on the agenda. We were told Brexit was done.
That's a good example.
It isn't. Given the Prime Minister's precarious position, is it really wise to pick a fight with the European Union over Northern Ireland?
Well, to some extent, actually, the person to read on this in many ways is David Frost, who I thought was actually a very good negotiator. It's a pity he went. But he will tell you that he actually tried to get the European Union on board for a review of the status of the protocol, because the protocol's plainly not working. It's added 27% to the transport costs of things going into Northern Ireland.
But hold on, if it's plainly not working, why is Northern Ireland the only part of the United Kingdom other than London which is now above its pre-pandemic economic activity?
Yeah, okay, but that's a reflection, frankly, of the Northern Irish doing a good job for themselves.
But this is the first time. The Northern Irish have always been there, but now they're in the single market for the EU, and they're in the British single market as well. They're doing very well. Looking at reports from manufacturers in Northern Ireland, they rather like the situation now.
Some do.
Well, enough to give Northern Ireland a boost.
Not the 20-odd who've ceased selling to the rest of the UK because of the burdens in the Irish Sea. And the simple truth is that it's not just economics here. We're talking about something, you know, at the moment the government is paralysed because the unionists will not sign up for a speaker. That stops Stormont coming into being. And what they're saying is we need our issues dealt with, and they haven't been dealt with. You've also got nationalists now not very happy with these arrangements too.
Except there's a majority in the Assembly for a version of the existing
But that's the
protocol.
problem, Andrew. Look, people talk about a majority. That when we started down this route, the Europeans said, "Oh, you know, we want to preserve the Good Friday Agreement." Yet both sides forget it's not a majoritarian agreement. It's an agreement which requires consensus from all sides, and it hasn't got that at the moment. What's happening hasn't got that. The Northern Ireland Protocol certainly doesn't have that. The odd manufacturer here and there doesn't.
Well, no, but production in Northern Ireland is now at a 13-year high. Mm-hmm. In Britain, sterling is down 9%, and our exports to the EU are down 12%. Where's the good news on this Brexit, you got us into?
I think I'll come back in a year and answer that question when we're out of
Oh,
COVID.
we've already been out for 2.5 years, and the
No, we haven't been out of
referendums-
COVID for 2.5 years.
No, but we've been out, and we're going to do worse than most other major economies, according to the IMF and the OECD.
think?
Where is the good news?
You think? I'm not sure that's right.
I'm only reporting what they're saying. So
more
the bit that remains in the single market of the UK is doing well, and the rest of us are languishing. I ask again, where's the good news in this Brexit business?
Ask me back in a year and I'll give you an answer on that.
So you can't give us an answer now after you made us take this
it's
enormous decision.
Partly because we have a Remainers Brexit. We have the Brexit that Theresa May handed off to Boris Johnson with all of the holes in it that shouldn't have been there. That's what happened there. That's why I resigned, after all. That's why I stepped down.
Let me give you a third chance. Give me one major benefit of Brexit as things stand tonight.
Well, our ability to make trade agreements with the rest of the world.
How many have we made?
5 or 6, I think.
Right. Most of them not that different from what we have.
Well, OK. Well, some are. I mean, and it's coming.
Huge.
Yeah. And they'll come on. There'll be
But our
more of them.
exports to the rest of the world are down by 6%.
Yeah, and our employment's the size it's ever been. So,
Employment was big even before Brexit.
Yeah, but it's growing now. Unemployment's down. I mean, look, you can pick what number you like, right, and make an argument either way. The truth is, we've now got control of our own affairs. We are able to build on that. One of my arguments with Boris is they haven't done enough of that yet. That's why.
Have you done anything?
That's why I'm concerned about the high tax burden. The very old-fashioned Tory view of the world says if you have the highest tax burden you've ever had, effectively, that's going to damage the economy. That's what we're seeing.
OK, we'll leave it there. I hope you'll
I'll come back
give
in a
us
year.
more than less than a year before you come back and see us,
All
David
right.
Davis. Thank you very much. After the break, I'll be speaking to Maddie and Stephen. Welcome back. Maddie and Stephen are with us. Let's just look at the Prime Minister's situation going forward, Maddie, now. I mean, it is said, I've said it myself, that his authority is diminishing. And I wonder if you can see that in an increasing number of reports in the newspapers where on big issues, the Northern Ireland Protocol, tax and spend, even social housing policy, they're divided and he doesn't seem to have the authority to overcome the divisions.
Yes, I think that's a very good assessment of it. I mean, another reason is that there's a sort of, under the surface, there is a sort of pre-leadership contest happening with all these different camps within the Tory party. So I think that creates more dissent than usual as the different camps sort of try to kind of show a little leg and show that they are set out what their stall would be. And that's happening openly with the people who said they're running. But it's happening in subtle ways from members of the cabinet too.
And maybe even Mr. Davis didn't entirely rule it out either.
Well, no, it was striking that he didn't say, he said, yeah, I've been approached, so I'm not sure about it, but he didn't say no, no, never. And Maddie's exactly right. That creates this atmosphere where people feel capable of, showing a bit of leg, doing it in a way which is sometimes a bit destabilising of the government. And it's very hard when you're a Prime Minister, once you're in that cycle, to get out of it.
The one thing that has bolstered Mr. Johnson's position has been, at least in public, the loyalty of the cabinet. That's what did for Margaret Thatcher after the first round against Michael Heseltine. The cabinet basically turned against her. I suppose at some stage, if things don't get better, if the reset doesn't result in improved performance, he can't always count on the cabinet.
No, during the confidence vote against Theresa May, one member of the cabinet then said to me, well, what we need is a better class of coup, because the confidence mechanism doesn't really work to get rid of an incumbent leader when the party's in office. And that better class of coup, i.e. the cabinet intervening, saying game's up, is still the biggest threat to the Prime Minister.
Do you see any signs of the cabinet having second thoughts about its loyalty to the Prime Minister?
Not really. I mean, some people have been talking about the meaningful silences of some cabinet ministers who were slow to, interact and come forward to support. But no, on the whole, and I think that really you could have a minor cabinet minister, someone with less clout. They could resign, and it probably wouldn't make that much difference. You need the Geoffrey Howe figure. You need someone with real clout. Whose opinions would actually register. And I think the minister who had the best opportunity to do that was Rishi Sunak a few months ago during the fixed penalty notice palaver, and he didn't take that opportunity. And now they're all kind of slightly paralysed by the situation. And I wonder also if some of them are thinking it's better to stick around and look loyal, and then perhaps I might be nominated as the kind of loyal John Major unity figure to take the reins after that.
One senior Tory said to me, when things are really bad, what happens in the Tory party is that some major grandee goes to the leader with a bottle of whiskey and a revolver and says, it's all up, Prime Minister, I'll leave this with you. So the problem is, Boris Johnson would likely just drink the whiskey and shoot you with a revolver. So no one's going to volunteer for that. The one thing I think that's quite hard to devise, and it's key in all modern politics, is economic policy. And he made a speech in the week just gone by. We're told there's another one coming up with the Chancellor as a kind of double act. Quite hard to define this government's economic policy, I would suggest.
Yeah, I think it's essentially impossible, partly because of that weakness of the Prime Minister. What we usually do when we have a period of inflation is you do something quite painful to households. You make them swallow the inflation, experience that in their pocket, and that's what gets inflation back under control. That's very, very difficult to do if you're a Prime Minister who has a leadership election going on underneath him, who, I mean, I think even when he was strong, I don't think Boris Johnson was renowned for being good at giving people bad news. And that means that it's hard to see what this government's economic policy is, right? They don't like any of these sort of new left-wing ideas like modern monetary theory, but they also don't sort of have the iron in the soul to say if it's hurting, it's working.
Like the austerity years, which Mr. Johnson seems determined not to repeat. I want to come on to Keir Starmer, but just before I do, Maddie, do you get the impression that in a curious way Brexit's coming back onto the agenda, that the hardline Brexiteers want to bring it back on with Northern Ireland? They want a really tough policy there. And the Remainers are kind of think, hey, maybe we could get at least the single market back on the agenda and so on. It's kind of reared its head.
It really has. And I think Tobias Ellwood was, when he put his head above the parapet to say we should rejoin the single market, it was slightly saying the quiet bit out loud, but I think similar other...
And he got shot down.
He did get shot down very quickly. And interestingly, we mentioned the kind of subtle Tory leadership race that's happening. The attitude to Brexit is one of the key defining qualities that I think they're hoping to look strong on, so as to perhaps get the backing of the Eurosceptic Tory MPs on the backbenches.
All right. We concentrate a lot on Mr. Johnson. He is the Prime Minister, it's the ruling party and so on. But despite the trials and travails of the government, Stephen, I would suggest these are not glory days for Keir Starmer, are they?
No, I think, at the moment, if you speak to the average Labour MP, they will broadly say something like, Keir Starmer does not frighten people, as both Ed Miliband and Jeremy Corbyn sometimes did, but he does not inspire any excitement, which sometimes Jeremy Corbyn in particular did manage to do. And they go, oh, maybe we can win by default. And that's never a comfortable position for an opposition leader to be in, where their supporters' best argument is, well, they can win for want of anything better.
Yes, because we don't like the other side.
Yeah.
I mean, I looked at that Observer poll earlier this morning, but I mean, what has Boris got to do to be slipped behind Keir Starmer and be regarded as a worse Prime Minister than Keir Starmer would be?
I don't even know. I mean, be on TV, happy slapping the Queen. I just don't know what Boris could possibly do. But it's kind of, I mean, I think, and you mentioned in your intro that, we have a pretty low calibre of politician. It also creates quite a dismal style of politics because, whatever happens at the next general election, it's likely that if Keir Starmer wins, it will be for being the not Boris guy. And if Boris Johnson wins, it will likely be that Labour couldn't regroup and get their act together. And Keir Starmer had his charisma bypassed and couldn't reach out to the members of the public. It's almost like we now vote against things, we don't vote for them.
We've only got about 30 seconds, Stephen. We mustn't forget, of course, he's still got this Durham police investigation hanging over him.
Yeah, he does, which... it creates a similar situation for Keir Starmer. There's a reason why Labour MPs have been giving very different answers on whether or not they back these strikes. It's because they think there might be a leadership election in that party sooner rather than later.
I see. Well, I think we need to spend more time looking at Keir Starmer in the weeks ahead. But thank you for being with us today. Now, just before we go, let's mark your card for the week ahead. The government, as we've been talking about, is going to publish its latest solution to the Northern Ireland Brexit protocol tomorrow, which looks destined, I think, to please precisely no one. And here's something to get your teeth into, and I mean literally get your teeth into it, because we're going to hear about Boris Johnson's food strategy. this week. And we understand it'll contain the novel idea that farmers should grow more food. Who would have thought of that? The Prime Minister even wants us to grow our own vegetables. There's a radical policy for you. It'll be eaten mess all round. Or maybe we've had enough eaten mess as it is. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.